Hello, my name is Mike Chan, and I'm a cloud solution architect in data and AI from Microsoft Hong Kong. I've been working in database, data warehouse, and Power BI for several years now, including set up a new data platform, tuning some Spark query, and also development on some visualized reports. So today I want to share with you Microsoft Cloud latest data warehousing tool, which is the Azure Synapse Analytics. So you may heard of the rebranding, which is from the Azure SQL Data Warehouse, but it's more than just rebranding. We are adding more functionality within the data warehouse. We are adding SQL on demand, Spark to these new features. So today we are going to check it out with the latest studio experience, its architecture, and also the new features that from Spark. All right, let's get started. So this is today's agenda. We will talk about the studio experience, data integration, and SQL and Spark. So nothing new to be here, to be honest. But with the latest Azure Synapse Analytics, we will deep dive into how do you use it, what experience you will be expecting from the Azure Synapse Analytics, and also how do you integrate with other data, with the SQL and Spark. And actually, there's more program language you can utilize. Let's take a look on the latest infrastructure of the Synapse Analytics. So as you can see here, we have the different areas. So the first thing is about platform. So many of you actually ask me, okay, we are building a data warehouse. Should we integrate with the data lake? It's really common questions nowadays. So this method is supported by Azure Synapse Analytics as well, because as you can see here, on the Azure Data Lake storage, you can integrate with multiple data model like common data model and then enterprise security and then optimize for analytics. Okay, so data lake is integrated. So say for example, you can polybase into the data from the data lake to the Synapse Analytics. And also, if you want to do some data transformation within the process, you can also utilize the Azure Data Factory data flow, which is already in the Synapse as well. So I will explain more a little bit later. So so data lake is not yet included in the Synapse Analytics, but you can do a lot of development on that one. And then up above layer, you have different management, security, monitoring, and metadata stored within the platform. It's all managed by the studio. So you can connect to different connected data sources, manage the role-based security within the studio. And then we have different platform services as well. And then the part is about data integration. So in the latest Synapse Analytics, you don't have to develop your own data pipeline in another service, or to be done within the experience of the studio. And then we have Analytics one time. I think you already heard of that before. We have been using the SQL, but the latest part is we are also incorporating the Spark as well. So that makes us more integrate, more completed in the analytics runtime. And then we have provision and on demand as well for both of them. So as you may heard or may already using the Azure SQL data warehouse before, it's all provisioned. You may heard of DWU in when it's Gen 1 or Gen 2, so it will keeping this way. So Azure Synapse Analytics will still have the provisioned SQL data pool. But other than that, we also adding the on-demand version, which means that you don't have to keep a running server just to serve your on-demand SQL. You can on-demand create session, and then when it's finished executing, it's no longer building you. So the funny thing is, the on-demand SQL will be on built on the how many terabytes of data you have scanned. So instead of proficient, you're always building for whatever you used. So make it more flexible when you're doing some data exploration, for example, within the data warehouse and within your data lake as well. So that's what we mean by on-demand. And then we have languages. As I mentioned, actually we're not just looking at SQL and Java and others because we already realized that there are more analyzed using different programming language, and we want to support that as well. So in the future, when you use this kind of analytics languages, you can also use it within the Azure Synapse Studio, say R, Scala, and Python as well. So that will be an integrated platform for your analytics. And then on top of that, all of them will be on the Synapse Analytics Studio. I think it's one of the biggest changes within the Azure SQL Data Warehouse, because in the past, you may have to go to Storage Explorer to explore the data. You have to go to Power BI desktop to develop your own Power BI reports. All things will be integrated on the Synapse Analytics Studio. One web page, you can do all the development end to end. So that's the value adding of the Synapse Studio. And then also we are integrating it with the Azure Machine Learning Service, IoT, business intelligence, of course, and then AI as well. So integrate with different services, which is the last part of this slide. And here is the Azure Synapse Analytics customer that they have been using our services. So you can see a lot of big names here. And then we have, say, for example, my past company, Whoop Cloud here. And then Walgreen and IKEA is one of the example I want to mention it today as well. Because Walgreen, we have been co-promoting with them on different data warehouse cases. On the online, you can also find a really interesting use case of cow in Japan. They are also a FMCG company, I would say, and then producing lots of cleansing powder, personal hygiene products, and then they're using like a lot of transaction per day. So it's really interesting to see how this company utilizing the latest technology to take care of the data warehouse. So the first example I want to talk about is Walgreens. They have been promoting with us on different Microsoft events. So basically, they have a really big on-prem data warehouse before, which is actually similar to what I have worked for before as well. So they have a Letiza on premise in their own data warehouse. It's legacy, is slow. The only good thing about that is you don't have to manage the indexes because you don't apply any indexing on the Letiza, but you have to do that in Azure Synapse. But the pros and cons is really different because even you don't have to manage the index, you have a lot of things to take care, like backup and restore, like scaling. You don't in hardware you can scale actually. So you're quite limited in when you're dealing with like say 5 years of your analytical requirements. So if you take a look on this example deep dive, you will see that they are struggle to maintain and didn't scale to evolving analytics requirement, which bring them onto a cloud, and then they have been using Azure SQL Data Warehouse, and now is evolved in the Azure Synapse Analytics. So this one of the interesting case. They are doing more on the serving layer on the SQL analysis. And the other one is the IKEA. So I would just want to share to you that even one of the biggest challenge in the global level, they can still taken care by the Azure Synapse Analytics. Um, you know they have been doing lots of transaction, and then they have 1 billion plus annual sales even to support better inventory, and they are doing lots of transaction, and then they have to find say for example, stockpile analytics and behavioral analytics within their transaction data. So that's why they choose Azure Synapse Analytics as well. They can now handle 400 receipts per second, not only by the data warehouse itself, but say for example, they actually using Azure Cosmos DB to receive the transaction. But how do you analytics on such a huge volume of data? You have something that built for scalability and flexibility on day one, not just adding on something, keep on using your more resources to take the problem. So that's why we want to introduce the Azure Synapse Analytics to you. So the first thing I want to mention about is the biggest changes when you interact with the data warehouse is this studio experience. So this slide will be running through. So the studio is what I want to focus on now. And then, so this will be the studio you'll be looking at when the public preview is announced. So right now, I think it's still at a private preview. We're going to public preview very soon, and then we have the studio as well. So you have single places for data engineers who should be taking care of the ETL, the schema design, the data loading methodologies, and then data scientists, they can export the data here with the orchestration and then development data, and they can also deploy the machine learning model here as well, doing different kind of analytics. And IT Pro is for management, and then how do you monitor the data loading, how to monitor the efficiency of the cluster, say for example, and cooperating with the enterprise analytics. So one of the new challenges we have been facing in data engineering is that we are quite far behind of the CI/CD, the DevOps methodologies. So one of the interesting thing about Azure Synapse Analytics is that we are now cooperating with another service called Azure DevOps. So you can DevOps on the Azure Synapse Analytics. You can DevOps on different projects. Even on the data loading part, you can cooperate with your teammates. So no longer just the SME loads all the data pipeline, but the whole team can troubleshoot and then share the work. So make sure you don't have to redundance the work within your own team. So that's the greatest part of Azure Synapse Analytics as well. And then we have the workspace, etc. So this is what we see in the activity hubs. So we organize the tasks for building analytics solution. You have overview, you have data, you have development. So development is about, say for example, you want a new notebook, you want a new SQL script, or you want to orchestrate the data pipeline. So many questions actually come from this one is there any differences with the Azure Data Factory, which is the product have been around for ages, for years, for data loading and data transformation? So yes, you will have the same outlook or even the same UI, but we are adding even more features with the same UI. So that's the answer. Oh, okay, as it differences. So also take on the building side, what I heard right now is that the building will be still separate, but you can use the same service within the studio to improve your cooperation and also your user experience. So you will have the same monitoring tool as well, and then manage the access as well on the same web page. So this is the beauty of that. And also, when you click into the studio, you'll find ingest, explorer, analyze, and visualization. So especially on the visualization, which especially for those MacBook user, so they have been struggling to use the Power BI desktop in the past. I know I have that. So right now we're tackling that with just the web page addition. So in the future, when you're using the Azure Synapse Workspace, you can develop your report on the web page. You don't have to go back to Power BI desktop.exe. No. So that's one of the beauty that even using Linux or mobile phone, I don't know, iPad, you can still enjoy the similar experience before for your development. I'm not sure it works on iPad actually for tablet. As long as your web browser support it, we can do it. So that's the beauty. And then we have useful links. Nothing special here. And when you go to the overview hub, you can find that you can do different kind of things, pipelines, Spark job, data flow. So data flow will be the data transformation functionality I mentioned about. It's definitely come from the data factory data flow as well. So it's the same UI. And then the data hub, you can connect to different storage account, dataset, database here as well. So one thing to look at is within the storage account, you will find that you can connect to different area, connect link storage account. So let me give you a live example of this one. So if you take a look on this is the private people Synapse workspace. If you click on the data, you can actually see that all of the storage accounts are here. And you can, just like in the past, on the Storage Explorer, you can new resources and new data source. So you can connect to different data sources, just like the connectors with the data factory. So after you have configured all the things, you can take a look on your storage account, and then you can do some exploration within each account as well. So this was one of the, you don't have to go back to our storage explorer like the past. So that's one of the good thing happening. And then when we go back to the data hub and then storage account, we also have the control here as well. So you don't have to worry about how do I manage the access, because within the studio, you can configure both directory and file level. POSIX asset control list within the web browser. So we want to design your own single web page experience with your own storage account. So that's why you can see all the management within this web page as well. And then we have the data set. So as I mentioned, SQL Pool is the one who exists a long time. The provision data warehouse here, and then we have SQL on demand, which scan your data by terabyte, and then you can do a lot of on-demand one-time execution. And then we have the Spark Pool as well, which is the last part of my section. And then I will talk about the other. So I assume you already know what's table, and then within the Spark, because one of the things I want to mention as well is a SQL pool will have the cooperativity with the Spark. So say for example, I can use the SQL to query a Spark data frame. So that's this one is on the roadmap as well. And you can have the SQL script, and then just like before, you develop a lot of script and then schedule it, automation as well, all within your studio. And CS we export a lot of things will happening with the JSON as well, because we already witnessed a lot of latest demand on how do we query the JSON, which will be in the middle of my presentation. I will talk about that. How do we acting the value on this one as well. And then we have the logbook experience. Within the notebook, you don't have to choose a lot of language of your kernel. Say, for example, you can use the percentage sign for the language, and then you can define, okay, I want one in this language. So it's quite flexible in terms of development. And then we have the Power BI. In the development hub, you can define Power BI report. So as I mentioned, you no longer have to download the Power BI dashboard. It's different to the Power BI.com experience, because in the Power BI.com you have to define your connections, you have to define your authentication. But right now, because it's already integrated with your permission to the data warehouse, you don't have to define a lot of things. Just open it, and then touching the data you are supposed to touch, viewing the data you're supposed to view, and then you can do a lot of things with the existing data within the Synapse workspace. So you can explore, analyze the data, Power BI, publish report as well. and then the other users can view your Power BI on the powerbi.com. So that's one of the beauty of that. And then you can see within that you can also define just like a Power BI desktop experience. So that's the part of the studio. And then if you take a look on the data integration, which I already mentioned, is one of the beauty. It's not just the data factory UI, but you can use also, say for example, Polybase to query different kind of data sources and then scale it, because Polybase is supposed to be parallel loading, and it gives you a faster experience compared with other data integration tool as well. So we have been going through this graph. So one thing I didn't mention is that in the Azure Synapse Analytics, your orchestration can be done with your own on-prem environment as well. So if you set up a self-host integration one time on a right now it's still, I think it's still on the Windows machine. So on your data center, set up a VM or physical machine for the connectivity with Microsoft Azure, and then you can have the self-host one time to connect your data sources on-prem to our cloud. So you can have the seamless integration because it's self-host a agent. It will do all the job for you on your behalf, and then you can define a link service. It's virtual to the orchestration of Synapse. So once you do that, we can pull the data from your own data center. Say for example, you can Oracle, you can have FlowSQL on your on-prem environment, and then the self-host integration one time will trigger and then pull the data to the cloud, and then do whatever activity you designed in the studio. And then just to mention that you can have more performance tuning with the Azure integration one time if the source and target is also on the cloud. So the differences here is that if you're using the self-host integration one time, SHIR, so the difference is that it has to be hardware bound. So it's not a serverless architecture. So say, for example, if you want to have more data loading processing power, you may want to scale out the machine or scale up the machine because it's supported both way. So say, for example, if you define the VM which is too small, and then you find the bottleneck is in your own self-host IR, and then you can scale out the SHIR. It supports maximum 4 Windows machine to be form a cluster to perform your data loading, which is I have done this in the past as well. We have 4 big Windows VM to transform a lot of data on to load the data, extract the data from on-prem data center to the cloud. And then, but on the Azure integration one time, because it's actually serverless to you, so you just define something called data integration unit, and then it will give you a better performance because it's cloud to cloud. So there's more flexibility. So that's the difference between the two things. And then we will have the data movement as well. On the Synapse Analytics, when you do the data integration, we can have up to 4 GB per second the speed. Especially data movement, you can have lots of parallelism, and then you can define how many data copy in one time, especially files or table, you can do a lot of things. And then you have other, you can define some code between as well. So one of the interesting thing is you can trigger even Azure functions within the data integration. So say for example, you know the file is coming, and then it's a .zip. You have to unzip it, right? So if you're unzipping with a password, you can do it by a code via the Python, and then drop some code, unzip the file, place it in the data lake so the data warehouse can analyze it. So the flexibility is really good, and then you can do a lot of things on that one. And then, as I mentioned, serverless, low infrastructure to manage, and then we have different connector, as I mentioned as well. So this is one of the popular connector in the past. I just want to point out that we have the Parquet, which is really popular data warehousing and big data file format. We have Afro, we have JSON, we have HDFS connector, and even you can connect to other cloud as well. A lot of people building the web page and then catch it or place it on the S3 or Google Cloud. We have connected with from those data sources as well. So you can connect different data sources data and then push it on Azure and then do a lot of analytics on different data sources. And then you have some different on-prem or different system as well. So Shopify and then Dynamics 365 as well, and then Salesforce. So there's lots of flexibility when you're connecting different kinds of data. And you have the pipeline, which I think you already know what I'm talking about because it gives you the graphical development experience. If you define pipeline, you can have different data loading, and after the data loading, you can do a lot of execution code as well, iteration, machine learning, etc. So this is the data flow, which I think I showed it before as well in the experience part. Code fee preparation because it you don't right now, say for example, this one, you can only see the regular expression or defining table, etc. So it's no code development experience as well. And then from drag and drop, you can do a lot of data exploration, transformation as well. And then we have the trigger, which I just like I mentioned, tumbling window, you get file at a periodic time. This one is especially useful, say for example, when you're doing streaming analytics, you can keep on looking how the data transform. Especially, say for example, IoT experience. So you want to keep on finding the same SQL on the same different sets of data because it keep on changing. So that's how it works. And then we have the event as well. So say for example, if your data lake we see a new file, you want to do some data transformation right away, you can define this way as well. So schedule is schedule, yeah, eventually. And then we have the pipeline execution, different kind of monitoring as well. So it comes to the biggest part is the SQL analytics. So SQL analytics, it could be defined at least into two parts. One part is the server pool, just like the Azure SQL data warehouse, you provision DWU, and then the other part is the SQL on demand. So I will go with the SQL pool first. So it's this part, provision SQL, and then you can have on demand SQL as well. Yeah, it has a comprehensive SQL functionality. I cannot go through it one by one. It's powerful. It do a lot of things automatically for you. Today I want to just highlight a few of things. Say for example, materialize you or talk about it. JSON data support. A lot of new functionality coming from this way, and then I don't think you have to know a lot of complete SQL object model for me because it has been around for a long time. So let's get started. So you have the windowing functions. As I mentioned, when you have, say for example, YTD calculation, you will still have the partition query defined for you. And then you have the different windowing set of rows on the query result. And then if you take a look on the windowing functions, you could also have, okay, say for example, my medium, and then how do I sell looking at sales data over the order by years. So analytical function is still there, and then it will give you a lot of ease for you to do a lot of YTD calculations, and then rows and range. So JSON is the one I want to talk about because it gives you more comprehensive look, especially nowadays lots of data is actually coming from API, and we foreseen even more popularity on JSON data. So especially IoT data, and then you have different API call, web browser, and there's In fact, a lot of people are using NoSQL nowadays, and then is you have a more simulate support on the on JSON data support. So you can use standard anchor data column to store JSON data, but you give you more hierarchical data structure in the tables as well, because you can look into different level of the JSON. We introducing some new functions called JSON value and JSON query, so you can extract the JSON object or away from a JSON string. So not only storing your JSON within as a string, but you can actively look into how many deep dive of level or the hierarchy of the JSON objects. It was especially useful when you're placing some, say for example, this one is like a POS data, so you can actually analytics on the JSON data as well. If you go deep dive within the items detail, you can extract those value as well. So it's ease of use for your aggregation and filter. So this is the beauty, and then extract a scalar value as well on JSON, and it also gives you a verification, so you don't have to go to some web page, explore the data to some third party. You can do even the JSON validation within our Azure Synapse. So modify or operate on JSON data as well. So open JSON, you convert the connection to a set of rows in columns. So it's really useful, especially if you have this kind of new data type, not just RDMS table and column. So materialized view, I think if you have been on the RDMS side, you will know what's that. I need to skip this one because it has been around for a long time, this technology. And then you have the copy as well, especially useful for if you're storing some data from multiple location like Azure Data Lake storage or blob storage. You can retrieve the data from all files from the folder. So from now on, even the SQL can query a folder, not just a file. So especially for its subfolder, and you can select some subset of your data as well in the copying command. I will talk about more, I think, at the latest slide, and then we'll go through it one by one as well. And then we have the workload management. This one is simple. If you have multiple users in using the Azure Synapse, and then your manager or your CEO comes in and, hey, I want a result. In a traditional LTMS, it doesn't classify people. It only tells you first in, first out. So in the past, concurrent limit will be, okay, your manager or CEO, the super important query will have to wait your some demo or data some dumb data exploration cycle. But now on, you can from now on you can define something called workload importance. You can define a level. Okay, if that is the CEO or manager, they need this forecast for afternoon meeting, they will be going to top of the queue because you already have defined. So he is more important query than my dummy query. So when the query arrives, it jumps to the top of the queue. So that's what is important with the workload classification. And then workload isolation as well. Different work group can have different resources assigned. So especially in the past, you have a DBA burning their head to define this kind of thing, but you can easily define it now with our own Azure Synapse. Yeah. And then we have the CI/CD, as I mentioned. You can define it as a target platform. So I'm not sure, 100% sure, but I think in major data warehousing world, so this functionality is definitely one of pioneer in the data warehouse, because in the past, say for example, if you're using Informatica to define some data flow, data load, you don't have the CI/CD, right? You have check-in, check-out only in the Power Center. But why now is because Microsoft product can be integrated. So we have the SSDD, and then you can define Azure SQL Data Warehouse as target platform, and then you can work on different thing. And then just like in the past, in the DevOps, you can merge you can pull the request and then see the latest development and then comment on that changes that may be defined by your teammates. So that's the beauty of the CI/CD. And then we have the SQL on demand as well. This one is really simple. You just pay only for your query execution because it's nothing magical. It's still a T-SQL query, but it's right now you can do a lot of instead of you have to people vision, calculate how many DW you'll be using. You just scan your data, file your query, and that's it. If that wants a short time, then you will be built for a short time, and then you don't have to manage a lot of infrastructure, and then you have the security as well because role-based access control always there. And then you have the T-SQL syntax to query the data, and then you can query even the data from the Databricks and or HD Insights, other big data product, and then different formats in the data lake as well. The Power BI can trigger this one as well. Yeah, so it's integrated. And we have query on storage. I don't want to see so a lot of syntax to you, but if you're interested, you can go on to online. We have some tutorial and self-host lab ready for you to taste it. And then when you query the storage, you just define this syntax, and then you can go and query the packet. And then result set is here. So you don't have to. Right now you didn't see any. Okay, do I have to use that cluster? No, you don't have to touch any infrastructure. Yeah. And then you query CSV file, and then as I mentioned, we can now query the folders. So open set of folder, you can CTAS on that. And then the beauty is that you can also read from multiple folder by the multiple folder, and then you can also read just subset of file in the folder as well. So it gives you some data that interests you. So on this one, so you can see okay role set, and then I only want the 2017 CSV. I will give you only this part of the data. And then file of course is support as well. You group by the file. It's optional, so you can also take a look on one single files. Yeah, and package support as well. We don't look into the syntax today, but also we have the OpenJSON, JSON value, and JSON query. As I mentioned, how do we define a JSON content? So it's particularly useful. CTS is still there as well, create external table, and then you can not exactly materializing it, but you can finally import the data from your own will to the storage. So I'll give you an overview on the architecture as well. So this one is complicated, but if you take a look on that one, nothing special, just like you're building a Spark pool on, on Azure. You have different VMs, and then you have different instance. So when you use it, the YARN will automatically assign your job to a available cluster or instance. So you can see that you will still define a Spark pool, and then your look family, okay, is memory optimized, and then how big the look size will be, and then I suggest you enable the auto scale if you're not familiar with Spark tuning, and how many looks you decide for as well at the beginning. And then you have some additional setting. Nothing challenging here. You can define the version. Right now it's 2.4. I think the future, very soon future, we're supporting 3.0 as well. And then because it's all following your Apache Spark version, so below version will be changed if you select different Apache Spark version. And then you have different package, like how I think it's the library version as well, which library you want to import with the pipe, and JDBC, and then you just the whole concept is still how do you copy the data, read the data in parallel methodology, because you can see even the polybase, you can do a parallel copying and then do a lot of analytics in that one. And code behind experience. Okay, this one is important and interesting. If you have been using things like HD Insights, when you define data sources, you have to do a lot of definition. You connect to JDBC URL, but it doesn't include a lot of things, and then you define which is the port and the database name, and then username, password, etc., etc. But because Azure Synapse is a unified experience, once you define the data sets and or in the data sets within the workspace, you don't have to keep and not define so many connections things. You just do it in one go, and then that's it in the UI. So from now on, your notebook or your even your SQL script, you don't have it's much more simplified and human readable in the future. So this is the approach and the experience we want to provide to Azure Synapse users. And then we create a notebook on file and storage as well. Nothing important here. I mean, nothing special here because you have been doing in the past. And then you can query the performance as well. Not a fully Spark history service experience, but it gives you more example. Okay, how do I look into how many duration and submission time I have been using in this job? So yeah, you can also view the result in chart format, and then you can define different languages in as a default language, and then you have yeah, the display, yeah, and export data, etc. Library management, I think you know that as well, so you can upload package, etc. So you can run the AML job on Synapse as well. So as I mentioned, you have Spark ML within our Azure Synapse Spark. So you can configure different parameters, job execution, etc. So that's one of the beauty of the newly integrated Spark application. So I think that's the slides for the Azure Synapse Analytics. And I will stay for the Q&A for you, and thank you very much for attending this webinar.